I'm going to get things going. We'll let people in once they come in, but may as well. Everybody's here on time. We'll get started. Go. Whoops. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi. Good morning and good afternoon to those who are in the afternoon. And welcome to COO Executives in Transition. This is one of the things we've started about 10 programs ago, and we're going to continue all the way into the new year and into 2021 as well. I wanted to share with you some of the objectives and expectations as well as the guidelines for this session. First off, CEO Executives in Transition is designed to support chief operating officers in these uncertain and challenging business times, getting COOs in transition on your way to your next great opportunity. Open to COO Forum members as well as any chief operating officer or second in command executive pro bono with absolutely no fee or obligation. This initiative aligns with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, Inc. COO Forum core values and is expressly intended for all chief operating officers and second in command executives. We are looking to add some new additions into the 2021. We have a committee meeting tomorrow on that, and we will be announcing if we're changing anything or doing anything, but we certainly seem to be very dedicated to this process, which is the Tuesday call, because it seems to be very helpful and working, and so that this will stay in place. We're looking to do some other things as well. Just a few guidelines for the group. First off, meeting courtesy. We want it helps for everybody to mute because it essentially blocks the noise for everybody. And when we get to a situation where we're doing a Q&A, obviously you unmute and then you go back to that. We're business first, so casual, relaxed. You know, if you get a call, family, the dog needs to be moved out of the room, whatever it is. You know, it's just very casual, very relaxed. We like business language and no politics. It just doesn't work very well, politics and business language, and the bad business language. The meeting is recorded, so we're going to put it on the Mighty Network for later reference. So you will have access to this meeting as well as all the others so far, and we will continue with that process. Keep your job prospects confidential. You know, this is a group of people who are looking for their next job, and we just don't want anybody poaching. And then there'll be Q&A and activities at the end. Chat, look at your chat, and if something comes up in the middle of the topic and you want to get it on chat, just put it on chat and we'll retrieve it later. Introduce to you the people that make this all happen. First off, Laura Weichel, who is the COO Forum Executive, the second in command for the 13 years as an Executive Vice President. Based in Greater Atlanta, she is responsible for leading the many and various activities of the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, COO Forum organization, and leadership overseeing all chapters, chapter directors, and members. She is a wonderful, upbeat, visionary colleague who creates extraordinary outcomes and successes. We also are joined by Fiona Murray, who's part of the leadership team and she is at the point of this initiative. So she's the one that most of you probably went back and forth to get information and so forth to get on the list. So, and Fiona is fairly new to the COO Forum, but doing a great job, and we're so pleased to have her as part of our team. Our speakers, Marvell Allen is owner and principal of Millennium Career Advantage LLC, a professional leadership development and executive coaching practice she started in 2010. As a valued strategic partner to senior executives, she's known for assisting teams and organizations with solving their most critical challenges while delivering quality executives, management and staff development and leadership programs with passion and commitment. Marvell holds a BA from the University of California, Berkeley, an MA from Dominican University, and several coaching certifications. Current and past clients have included companies and organizations in technology, banking, financing, services, hospitality, municipalities, and the US government. For fun and relaxation, for Marvell, nothing beats global travel, golf, classical music, and wine tasting. And Josh Renicker has served as an operational leader of Energy Access, Inc. since 2006, and currently holds the position of Chief Operating Officer, a role he has served since 2013. Josh is a husband and a father of 2 children. His career started in manufacturing, first as a full-time machine operator, working midnight shifts, while attending and earning associate's, bachelor, and master degrees as a non-traditional student. His career spans several verticals in manufacturing, including automotive, signs and lighting, packaging, and electronics. Josh has built his career on the adage, simplicity and add effectiveness. He used this approach to business management and project management and continues to strive for excellence through an attitude of continual learning. He has been assisting people with developing effective resumes through personal contacts and through local university career services offices since 2010. Josh enjoys family, travel, music, art, and motorsports, along with his work and efforts towards lifting others. Take it away, Josh.
Give me a second here to get slides up and moving here. All right. Can everybody see the slides? Hope so. Yes. Okay. Good deal. Thank you, Bill. Glad everybody's here. Looking forward to sharing some things today. Marvell and I are honored to
Josh.
share.
Hey, Josh, you want to go full
yeah.
screen?
Yeah, you want to go full screen on yours? We see the presentation mode with the next presentation over.
Oh, weird. Okay. That's weird. I'm not sure why that is.
There you go.
Strange. Okay.
Now you're set.
Yeah, that was weird. So yeah, we're honored to share our ideas in preparation for interviewing. Hopefully, we can bring some value to you and help you in your transition. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat. We'll hold a Q&A later in the presentation. What we're sharing today is our opinions on interview prep, including knowing what, who, why, and how. I want to start with the idea of a value proposition. If you were present for the discussion on resumes in November, some of this will be review. Constructing a value statement will prepare you for those elevator speech moments. This exercise is a great tool for reflection and confirmation. So I always start with your core values. List what is important to you at the core of who you are. Once you have this list, focus on the top 3. Next, we look at the core values that you look for in an employer. So same thing, make your full list and then focus on the top 3. I have a few examples there. Lastly, we look at the value that you bring to an organization. So these can be based on your skills, approach, your management style, those kind of things. And again, we want to focus on the top 3. So putting those things together, this exercise should take you some time. This is a great exercise to really dig into you, who you are, looking in the mirror. And here I show a breakdown of basically the 9 values across the spectrum that we want to spotlight in a statement. So put all together in a nice package, a value statement can sound something like this. In a role of Chief Operating Officer, I strive to build efficient teams rooted in integrity and take an open-minded approach to process implementation to derive data-driven results. My values shine when trusted with bold goals and take ownership and accountability to meet the objectives. Marvell, do you want to share your thoughts on value proposition before we move into research? Marvell.
Marvell is on mute.
My apologies, I was on mute. Thank you. Good morning again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Josh, I would just mention that one of the challenges that we face with value proposition is that we tend to not see it as important as the actual components that a company is laying out for the position that they're looking to fill. We ignore the things that are going to potentially make us a better fit or help us evaluate if we're a good fit for the organization. And we ignore those, instead start looking at what are the components of the job. And those job components, we believe if we match several of them, then we're set to go and be really forward thinking about that position. The danger with that is there could be other candidates that the organization sees as more capable and valuable than you, but they still need to interview for the position. So I think it's important that we wrap our arms around this whole discussion of our values and the values of the organization so we can make a little bit better, I think, analysis on whether this is an opportunity for us. But I will say in closing, this particular exercise is valuable for every job position that you might be looking for. By the way, whether it's full-time or part-time. So if we look a little bit going further, I'm sure you've heard this from your colleagues and friends that doing your research is really very important on how you look at an organization, how you look at the fit between that organization and your skill set, and then the importance of making sure that there are other areas that you want to pay attention to. So in this first slide that we want you to look at, we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by the research. And if you can see this, just give me a second here. If you can see this in terms of the research, we believe that, and I'm sure you have thought about this yourself, please be aware that we're sure that a lot of the components we're going to talk about this morning, you probably can just validate because you're already doing these. But you need to really look at what the products are or the service that the organizations are providing. So you're going to do a well-rounded profile, the markets they serve, the history and their growth patterns. By the way, this includes whether they've been acquired or not, so that you can see what's been the mix of their initial culture and the culture of the acquiring company. Looking at the press releases, and I would add on press releases, not just the press releases that come from the company, but you need to do a well-rounded review of all press, good and bad, that has been done on the organization that you're considering. And I mentioned acquisition patterns, if they are acquiring and or if they've been acquired, what their revenue growth and streams are, any competition that they have. And that competition can be in a wide variety of ways, including a mix in the channel, et cetera. And then their supply footprint, whether it's vertical integration, whether it's other ways that they are involved in that supply strategy, whether it's domestic, international, et cetera. So the profile is very important. And then when we look at the why, we really want to do some homework in glimpsing What is the company culture like? This is an area where you can use your own network of people who may know about the organization. Certainly, we're going to talk about social networking in just a bit and the importance of that. But it's really important that you educate yourself on all parts of this organization. Strategize responses to questions that they may ask you or that you need to find out from them. And then you want to make sure that those specific responses are included also to assess and align your values with the company values. Each one of those is going to be very, very, very important. And excuse me, I might add that this is not always if you are the one that's initiating the search for these companies. Be aware that because of the level that you are at as a second in command, COO, etc., companies are going to be coming after you as well. So if you have a formula like this that you test against those companies, it can be very, very opportune and really can be very successful for you. So what about the corporate messages? This is a real area that we tend to forget, that there's important clues about what that company is about when you look at their corporate messaging. This is their why. Why are they in business? Why are they successful or not? Why are they looking for candidates like you? So you do want to get a very objective view on their purpose, their mission statement, vision, what their quality policy is, anything else that's going to help you feel comfortable that you understand who this company is. And I will go so far as to mention that when you look at examples, just over the last 9 months, 10 months that we've been dealing with COVID, we've been dealing with social justice issues in our country, we've been dealing with all kinds of issues around the elections. It's important that you do a well-rounded view of what the corporation is looking at, because you want to find out if it matches with your values. For example, if they make decisions about messaging they're going to put out after organizations are now making a decision that they want to put something out about the death of George Floyd or all of the civil unrest. Candidates pay attention to how the organizations are managing these messages. So it's important for you to decide what's going to be important for you as you look at these organizations. Okay. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to talk a little bit. I'm actually going to turn it over to Josh in just a moment, but I want you to consider that right now, the 3 social media platforms that we believe are important for you to start your relationship, if you will, with the social media world is LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Probably LinkedIn being the most important because of its relationship to not only self-promoting, but finding out things about your colleagues and friends. Facebook, for those of you that are on Facebook, potentially there can be employees that you could meet there. People in your Facebook network can introduce you to others. And then I think it creates an opportunity. Personally, for myself, I am not on Facebook. And the reason I chose that is because I see it more of a social opportunity as opposed to a business opportunity. Now, that being said, I want you to consider also that some of your potential client organizations could be there and you still want to consider them as an opportunity. Twitter is the same way. I think that Twitter is an important area to do research, find out what people are saying about different areas. And I think that with those 3 being the most important right now, I would say that that's where you should focus. One last point on this. Several people have said, yes, but these are established social media. What about things like Instagram and that kind of thing? Well, here's what I say about Instagram. If your line of business is in the area of, say, fashion or the arts or anything that is other than traditional businesses, you probably want to be on Instagram, because there might be areas there that can meet exactly with what you're looking for in terms of potential organizations that would hire you. So I'm not saying that it's throw it out, but I want you to consider and do your research even on the social media platforms that you want to consider. Okay, Josh, we turn it back to you.
Yep, I just wanted to add, this idea of building a company profile of a potential employer. You go combing through the social media side, and that really starts to give you a glimpse of what's going on behind that curtain. How do they manage interaction with the general public? How do they interact with their employees? Those kind of things, because you'll find that companies, things that come from the company are generally like positive and lifting and those kind of things. So if they're lifting just their products and services, that may be a little bit of a head scratcher and into what their company culture is. But if they're always showing that they're doing events with their employees, or they're doing building houses for Habitat for Humanity, those kind of things, that gives you a glimpse into what their why really is. So it's just a way to read between the lines. But really, we want to focus on LinkedIn. Obviously, LinkedIn is the go-to place for professional networking. I'm going to break down the use of LinkedIn for interview prep specifically into 4 main categories: company, activity, people, and transition. So if you go to a company landing page, you'll see basically 2 things. You'll see an about section and you'll see a job section. The about section gives you an opportunity to see if their message is aligned across all the web platforms. So when you click in there, it'll just give you a blurb about the company, and that should be aligned with what their website says, what their image is on Facebook, all those kind of things. Jobs gives you insight into positions that they're listing. Of course, that's if they post them on LinkedIn, and they may not be completely active on LinkedIn with their employee search. Next, I want to cover activity. This will include what the company has posted to its LinkedIn feed. So this isn't on their landing page. This is actually the activity that they post. This can give you a bit of a look behind the curtain. You can see if there are posts about community involvement, job posting activity, all of those sort of things. I've also seen companies share employee activity here, like work anniversaries or accomplishments. And this gives you a little bit of insight into the business culture. Now we move into the exciting part, the people. When you're researching a company on LinkedIn, there's a link to see people who work here. And this allows you to gather info on the team. You could take a look at how active they are together. You can see if they're interconnected on LinkedIn. And it can also lead to an opportunity to gain a personal reference inside of the organization. So you could end up finding somebody who's a second connection and reach out to them and get a connection and tell them, hey, I've applied for this position, I'm having the interview. And then you can have that person in your pocket when you go into the interview. So on LinkedIn, I tend to reach out and connect to anyone that I've had connection with. So I'm always open to new connections, as I know Marvell is, and Bill is, and Laura, and probably everybody that's on this call is open to building out their LinkedIn network. So please feel free to reach out to any of us and make that connection. Because again, you never know how that could lead to a second connection into an opportunity that you're actually interviewing for. And then that gives you a little bit of inside track. And then I want to talk a little bit about transition. One of the things I like about researching companies on LinkedIn is that you not only see people currently working there, but you can see people who previously worked there. So when you're combing through people, you could start to see, okay, if this person worked there 5 years ago, were they just on a growth track and this position kind of fit in their growth track? Or, okay, I found 5 people that all have this similar end date of their employment. What happened? That's something you could bring up. Hey, in looking at LinkedIn, I see that there were 5 people that left in the spring of 2011. what happened, what was going on in the company at that time that caused this big transition. Like it's those kind of things that really start to raise eyebrows at, wow, this person really did their research. And that information is just out there. It's out there public to find. It could also give you insight into turnover. If you start combing through people and see that people have a year tenure or 18-month tenure over and over and over again, that gives you a little bit of concern, some red flags to throw up. And boy, I don't know, maybe this is something we need to discuss. And you could potentially stumble on to the person you are going to replace, the position you're actually interviewing for. You may find the person that's left. And you can do with that whatever you wish. If you want to reach out to them, get some inside scoop on why they left, what they left for you. That information is out there. This is just people. It's people are all about the networking side. So, generally speaking, if you reach out to somebody and you have something specific, a reason you're reaching out to them, most people aren't gonna turn you down just to have a discussion. People tend to turn people down if you sell them right away. But if you just want to reach out and have a discussion with somebody, generally speaking, people are pretty open to that. So with all of that, I'm going to bring Marvell back in, and we're gonna kind of go through this kind of idea of how. So now we have our value statement that's kind of a reflection of us. We looked in the mirror. We feel really good about what we bring to the organization. We've done company research. We understand what their verticals are. We understand their history. We have information on their culture, their people. So we have all this information. Now, what do we do with that? So I'm going to pass it to Marvell to kind of take us through a little bit of now what? Now, what do we do? How do we use this information in the process?
Thank you, Josh. And we're going to circle back after we discuss a little bit on this slide. We're going to open it up for Q&A from all of you. And I'm just checking our time here. There's a couple of things that I have done with a lot of my coaching clients that I've prepared for interviews. And one of the challenges that they face is the emotional situation that they're in around needing to be a successful candidate that lands the job, and what may have happened in the position they had before, and clearly the unknown about what's going on after that. So we put together some things, and we want you to know that if we're validating what you already know, that's a good thing. Part of this is going to be refresher for some of you. Others, if you haven't interviewed in a long time, it certainly is going to make it a little bit fresher for you. Then I think the other thing that we want to have as a disclaimer is that things could be slightly different depending on whether you're new in your career or have not had as many years in your career, or whether you're mid-level in your career, meaning you've got, say, 8 to 10 to 15 years of experience. And then when you look at the level of a COO or second in command, it can also make a difference if the company and the industry is more traditional, or if it's a startup situation. So all of these things are going to play in as you think about the other things that have to happen. And so we talked a little bit about what happens when you're looking at the list of questions that could be asked or that you want to ask. So we want you to steer clear of just believing all you have to do is answer the questions well. We put 3 articles in, well, they're definitely going to be in the Mighty Network, and I think they may also be added to the link that people will be able to see. One of these is about how to answer questions that you're uncomfortable with. How to answer those questions that could simply be, I'm not sure, it's a negative. How do I make that decision? And then I think the other one is we put in questions that potentially you can ask the employer. Part of these questions will come directly from the work that you've done in your research. And it's important that you have 3 to 5 questions ready to ask the hiring manager, not the recruiter necessarily, but the hiring manager, any of the people that are going to be on the team that's interviewing you. Out of that 3 to 5, pick your top 2 questions that no matter what you have to ask. And sometimes if we don't get the opportunity to ask the question, we figure out a way in our answer to another question saying something like, by the way, I also wanted you to know blah, 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 or I really appreciated seeing your comments after your last call relative to your revenue. I appreciated hearing blah, blah, blah. So you will make the decision, the important things that you want the company to remember about you with those questions. That's one thing. And then the other thing that I think is really important is for you to be prepared to answer questions about weaknesses. So we put an article there for you to look at with some answers that you could give in terms of, what do I say about my weaknesses? Or what do I say about a job gap? You know, I was working in one place and then they dissolved and I was out of work for 5 years or whatever have you. So that's that bullet that talks about be prepared for your response to negative statements. Oftentimes it's not a question. It's, I see from your resume that between 2000 and 2005, there's a gap between that and your next position. Then a little silence. You need to be prepared to manage what that looks like without feeling like you have to give them the Gettysburg Address on your life. Okay, that you don't want to do. But it's really important that you ask yourself the question, if they pose X, how am I going to respond? If they ask me about areas that I had to overcome, how am I going to respond? So I want to just mention that those 3 articles we put in are quick. You can read them. They have answers. Tailor those answers to you. I think the hardest thing when we're interviewing, in the prep anyway, is that we're trying to consider everything they could ask. I'd rather let people think about what the flow of the conversation is going to be. That flow is very, very important. And then both Josh and I believe that, I mentioned to Josh, he calls it the Columbo question. You know, if any of you have ever watched the old Columbo series, you know, he's out the door and then he stops at the door and turns around and says, oh, by the way, blah, 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 blah. So Josh calls it the Columbo question, and I call it the 501 question. So 501 meaning 5 o'clock, 1 minute after 5, the meeting is over, the interview is over. And you have to know, what is my 501 goal when I leave this interview? What's the goal? What do I want them to remember about me? Something I said about the company, about strategy, about my passion for the things that their employees do. So your 501 goal, or the Columbo question, is for you to consider before you leave the interview, what is it that you want them to know / remember about you? And then one other piece that I think so many candidates forget: one interview does not make the job offer. That's first. 2 interviews don't necessarily make the job offer either. What you're looking for in the first interview is an invitation to the second interview. And in the second interview, you're looking for an invitation to the third. At your level, there may be 3 or 4 or 5 interviews before there's discussion about where you're going to be. We really love you and want you to come on board. What's it going to take to get you? All of that is going to be later. So you need to pace yourself with the information that you're providing. And you need to also make sure that you're very, very clear that you're interested, and that comes in the way you ask the questions that you have of them. And as Josh said, make sure you use your network, even that new network that you're building. So questions you can ask at the end of the interview, or even in the middle sometimes, areas that you want to make sure that they know about your weaknesses, how you're going to manage those, and then just making sure that you're clear about your 501 goal and or your Columbo question. Okay. So Josh, we want to open it up for questions or see
Yeah,
if
I think
yeah.
we open it up for questions at the moment. If anybody's got anything, you could throw out obscure interview questions that you've had, or things that stump you, and we can go around those things. I haven't really seen anything show up in the chat, so maybe we've covered absolutely everything, Marvell. There's no.
I'm happy to ask the first question. First off, Josh and Marvell, thank you very much for presenting this morning. I really appreciate you pulling all this information together. Just a question on one of the last comments that you made in terms of pacing yourself with the info that you provide during the series of interviews. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And do you want to approach this sort of with an ace in your back pocket, something that you're saving for a real pivotal moment of the interview process, whether that's a success story or whether that's something unique about your background? Is that part of, you think, the strategy for the interview process to know that there's a really powerful piece of information that you want to hold on to and provide at the appropriate moment?
Yes, yes and yes to that, Chris. I also don't want you to feel like every bit of wow information has to be given in the actual interview. We know that people are struggling with trying to keep up with email and texts and things like that because of the shelter in place and the new way that we're doing business. But I would say that I'm always reticent to overload the interviews with a lot of success stories and me, because I want to look at, and I'll use myself as an example. Many years ago when I was interviewing for positions, I was always concerned about the pain that the company was having. And what could I do to solve that pain, since I was now one of the candidates that they were considering? So sometimes I will bring up a success story that I believe directly impacts something that I may have seen in my research about what they're looking for, or something that they've struggled with. That's number one. But I may also include it in my thank you email to the panel that I may have interviewed with. I really appreciate the time we spent, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I wanted to make sure that I reiterated blah, blah, blah. If there's something I wanted to make sure they didn't miss. That's the first thing. The second thing, since I'm assuming, unless I'm going to be let go, quote unquote, as a candidate after the first interview, my hope and goal is that for the second interview, I'm going to prepare in a very similar way. So that, not as if it's a new interview, but I want to bring a couple of more things to the table that can support my initial information that I provided them. And one other piece to that also, Chris, the other article that we put up for you is tell me a little bit about yourself. That fateful dagger in the heart question. People want to give the Gettysburg Address. They want to tell you where their kids went to college, when you potty trained them. I mean, they don't want to know any of that. But the tell me about yourself is an opportunity for dialogue, for quick bits of information that you draw them into. It's storytelling, and you get to find out a little bit more about them. And so I think that's really important as well. That article on Tell Me About Yourself also has some example things that you can say or begin to create your own little scenario that you want to give them. And I liken it to a soliloquy that we might have had in some of the Shakespeare plays, just some bits of information that you would give. So lastly, Chris, on that, after you're done with that first interview, you have to do a data dump. And we're going to talk a little bit about what to do after the fact. But I will tell you, do not leave that interview and go home or go back to an office or go meet friends, because everything that you needed to jot down to be ready for the next thing is in your head. I simply go to a quiet corner, go into the restroom, go into a stall, pull out my notebook and start jotting down things that they said, something I missed, that I want to make sure shows up in the interview, excuse me, in the email that I send, because I won't recall it all. I want to make sure I make a note about body language. If I'm in a panel, who was taking notes and who was not paying attention. All of those kinds of things. If you believe you don't have the bandwidth to remember it all, you got to jot it down while you can. Little long, but I hope that gave you a little bit, Chris.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that a little bit, Marvell. I generally tell people, have those big aha things in your pocket, but use them either to answer something that is relatable, or hold it till you want to hit them with something, whichever comes first. You don't want to leave something in your back pocket that would have been really effective as an answer early in the interview because it was actually related to that, and then in hopes that you have an opportunity to bring it up later. So I would have those 3 to 4 things that are like, man, these are big aha things, and if you're prompted to it and you can relate it to something specific, then bam, hit it then. Even if you use them all up early in the interview, if it's more important that they're relatable than that they're aha. So that would be my recommendation for that.
Yeah. And here's one other piece that you need to consider. Sometimes a hiring manager or the panel or whatever will ask you a question on purpose to throw you off, stump you. They may even decide that they want to ask you a political question. And you need to be real clear in advance how you're going to answer it so that you don't look like they caught you off guard. That is so important. And given our current climate, I think you rehearse a couple of things that you want to say without giving affiliation or anything like that, unless they're really being blankety blanks. And you need to be able to say, well, I appreciate the fact that you're asking that question, but can you help me understand what the relationship is between that and this position? Throw it back on them. You don't have to answer about your political persuasion or any of that. But at the same time, what it does do for you, if they're pressing you on it, is help you take that company off your list. Because this is about you interviewing them as well. And you want to make sure that an organization that you're going to give your valuable expertise to understands what you bring and that value. And if they don't, c'est la vie, they're gone.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes you got to pet the bulldog and see him to the door.
With your hands out of the way.
Exactly. I was curious, Cecil had an interesting question here. Cecil, would you mind framing your question for us?
Sure. It was a interesting situation. Had been brought into an interview, and the hiring manager, of course, had done his research on me. I had done my research on him, but literally that was the very first question out of his, that he asked me was, you have more experience than I do. Why do you want this job?
That's a strange one. Yeah, I mean, was there any more setup than that?
No. Again, that was the very first question out of his, that he asked, other than, hi, how are you? And I pretty much knew right then and there, or whatever, that no matter how long this interview went or how many people I met that day, that there was no way they were going to hire me for this position.
So Cecil, let me help you with that question, because I had a similar situation, and the challenge in your situation was that it came first. Mine was the second interview, and it was with the hiring manager's boss, who made comments that led me to believe I did not have an opportunity in that company. But here's what I would recommend to you when that kind of question comes up. The perception that if you have more experience, that you're going to try and take the hiring manager's job away from him, or you're going to want to shine for his boss so that you get all of the accolades and look better. Let's pretend that that particular hiring manager is very insecure and is very concerned that that could be the case. But that's one of those stumper questions. That's one of those. So I know you've got more experience than me. What the heck are you doing here interviewing for this job? You can easily say, I'm looking for a partnership. And I believe that with what I bring to the table and what you bring to the table, we can be a great team for blah. So you're selling the partnership between you, not putting yourself in a position to already be shown the door and waste your time, quite frankly, from the other side. The second thing that I'll say about that is that it doesn't matter if you believe you're not going to get the job. It matters what the hiring manager thinks about how you answered that question and whether you could tough it out. So that kind of question, I would always be prepared for. It's okay if a hiring manager is not a servant leader and therefore doesn't believe that he needs to bring in people who have complementary skills, more skills than you or than himself or herself. And in my case, the hiring manager that I was interviewing with was intimidated by me, and that's when I knew I wasn't going to get the job. Now, that being said, I loved being there. I use that as practice for interviewing. Remember, that first interview is not the job. It's not the job. It's the experience to get ready and to go further. So those kinds of questions are yummy questions, and you have to look at them that way. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh. That's a great question.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
Just to move on, we wanted to kind of reel it back in and offer up some tools and resources that you can use. So the links are here, and again, Laura, I believe we're going to post this deck up on the Mighty Network. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, I posted some of the links already to the Mighty Network, so they're there, and I will definitely get that presentation posted as well.
Okay. And I did post an Excel template in the chat as well, as just a simple template that you can use as you're doing your research on the company, just a place to dump that information and use as almost a checklist. So yeah, I did dump a simple one in there. And I wanted to touch on practice and doing mock interviews. I've done several mock interviews with several colleges here in Indianapolis area. I go into their career services office and help students with those kind of mock interviews. The mock interview stuff is a good situation for you to kind of build that comfort level and make the interview conversational. For me, when I was interviewing for jobs, it's now years ago, but it was always about how relatable can I be? When I'm in that room, how relatable can this discussion be? I'm always about reading the room, and you're almost always going to find in those organizations people that are still holding on to their college days. So to me, that's an easy, relatable thing. Somebody will walk in with their coffee cup and it'll have the big Purdue sign on it or whatever college they went to. So it's like, okay, I know that I can talk about my college experience with that guy. Because if he's walking in and he's representing his school that he went to 30 years ago, I know that we can talk about that. And that's something that I can relate to. If you interview in somebody's office, generally speaking, there's going to be something sitting around that you can grab onto. Oh, this is cool. Like me, I have several chess sets sitting around in my office. So almost everybody that comes in my office, oh, you must like to play chess. Like, well, not really, but I like the look of them. But it's a conversation piece. Practice those kind of things. Practice sitting down with somebody, reading the room, talking about items that aren't even related to the job, but because then you start to become a person instead of just a resume that they're trying to fit into a box that they're trying to fill in the organization. Because then, once a conversation turns away from, do you check all the boxes, to, man, I really want to work with this person. That really changes the conversation, because then you can build yourself into a position that's potentially greater and wider spanning than what they've put out as a job description.
Yeah.
And the only way to get comfortable with that is by doing it. So, even if you sit down with some of your colleagues, find somebody on LinkedIn and just be like, somebody that's local and like, hey, can we just meet and like talk like we're in an interview setting? Let's just talk through that. Ask me some questions. I'll ask you some questions. Let's have a conversation like we're in an interview. Because the more comfortable you get with that, the less it feels like you're on a game show and you have to answer the questions correctly, or else they ring the buzzer. If you start feeling like that, that's when the anxiety starts to rise. But if it just feels like a conversation, like you're having coffee with somebody, then it comes across as genuine. It's organic. Then it leads the conversation where it needs to go. Marvell, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. And I want to give a chance to Grant Webster to talk about the 2-minute commercial, because it's a best practice. I want to mention one other thing that could potentially come up. Because you're doing research on the organizations and their competitors, be prepared for the hiring manager or the panel to ask you, well, there's 15 companies in our space. Have you done research on the others? Are there any of those companies that you're also considering? They can ask you that. And you don't have to say it, but you want to demonstrate your expertise at doing the research on the companies, not making a plus minus delta answer for them in terms of those organizations. So be careful. That's another one of those stumper type things that can be asked, but you want to demonstrate your ability to do research. If it's a marketing type COO position you're looking for, demonstrate that, your ability to do that marketing work. And then the last thing I'll say about the mock interviews, etc. You got to be clear. We put time dialogue there because you want to be very careful that you're not going on and on and on, that you can get to your point quickly. And what I like to make sure candidates ask right after they've given the answer to something, ask the question, does that give you an idea of what I think about that particular blah, blah? Because then they could have a follow-up, and you want to be prepared for that follow-up if they do. Okay, so I really like that, because it ain't over when it's over and you've just given your answer. There's more that can potentially be drawn out from either you or them. So if we have a minute, Grant, can you give some information? I see you're in the chat with this 2-minute commercial. You want to give us a quick overview of what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So a 2-minute commercial is commonly termed as an elevator pitch. But the best practice in order to do it, I've often found people, it's the answer that you give when somebody says, "Tell me about yourself." But it doesn't only necessarily apply in your in the interview process. It can be at a local restaurant. It can be at a networking event. It can be at an event like this. And basically, the 2-minute commercial follows a simple step: yesterday, today, tomorrow. From a best practice point of view. And really what it says is, this is what I was, this is what I'm doing today, and this is what I plan to be tomorrow. And if you put that into your work, into your work context, or you write it specifically for an interview process, you will write your life history and the achievements and accomplishments and everything that you've done, and it might be 3 or 4 pages. And then you need to put that into a 2-minute commercial. The 2-minute commercial is you advertising yourself and saying the right punchy things at the right time, using a yesterday, today, tomorrow. So a good example, and very quickly I would go, "Hi, I'm Grant, I'm from South Africa. I'm a retailer by heart, and I've worked through various organizations and spent the last 20 years in general management. Now, more recently, I am an experienced COO, and I help businesses scale. And in the future, I really am looking forward to partner with a number of businesses and launch new products in the world." That's very off the top of my head. That's a 2-minute commercial. And
Yeah.
you would obviously prepare that 2-minute commercial for the role that you're applying to based on the research. So one of the comments I put was about researching the panel. So your 2-minute commercial would say, I'm an absolute diehard Lakers fan, but you wouldn't say that if your boss supported, you know,
Different.
the Miami Heat. Okay, you
Yes.
would find a different way of bringing it in for some sort of connection.
Yeah.
So it's quite important to have a framework on a 2-minute commercial, following the yesterday, today, tomorrow, and then making it targeted to the panel who is going to be interviewing you, and trying to get the connections of what has happened on your journey and how it relates to their journey.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
as you did, as Joe, you have transitioned through X, Y, and Z. I have also done the same and done ABC. So it allows you to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Grant. That is really wonderful. Thank you for adding that. And one last little kind of lighthearted quip that I'll add. I was looking at a internship opportunity when I was at UC Berkeley, and I was struggling with it, and I was thinking that, oh no, I'm not going to go for it. They'll never hire me and bring me into this. And my older sister told me something that I have never, ever forgotten. And I use it with colleagues and friends and also clients. And that is, Marvell, it's a sorry dog that can't wag its own tail. And I thought, okay, well, wait a minute. There are great ways to talk about yourself in a positive way, and think about how we think about dogs that don't know how to wag their own tail and look like they're excited and look like they're proud. So if you think about that, it's a sorry dog that can't wag its own tail. You never have to worry about feeling like you're boasting or that you're trying to show people up for what they are as opposed to what you are. So I love that, and I use it constantly in support of clients as well. So here.
Yep, with just a couple minutes left, we wanted to touch on the follow-up to the interview process. So after the interview is over, you always want to send a message of thanks. Generally speaking, it's an email. That email should include some call to action. It should include, you know, I look forward to hearing from you by next Friday, as discussed. You know, I look forward to, you know, here's this information. What do you think? I look forward to connecting on LinkedIn. Whatever it happens to be, there needs to be some call to action there to continue the dialogue. And be specific and be direct. Pull things out of the interview and reiterate some things.
Yes.
As we discussed, you know, as we reviewed, all those kind of things are very, very important. That as an interview follow-up. And I've seen a trend in recent years where people skip this step. The number of interviews that I've performed, and I don't get anything back. Like, man, why would you miss that opportunity? And I actually said something, somebody here recently. I said, you know, it almost makes me want to post a job, refuse everybody, and then interview the people that follow up. Like, those are the people you want to talk to, right? It's like, man, because, you know, I've gotten more responses from people that I'm like, yeah, you know, you're missing some things on your resume. You're not really a good fit, and those guys. But I get more feedback from those people than people that I interview. Man, I wish I would have interviewed that guy. So yeah, this is a very, very important step. Make sure you're following up and follow through, because that can make the difference.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Josh, 100%. And listen carefully in the interview itself, because someone could mention something that you can turn around and say, oh, well, Cecil, you know, I happen to have that article still. I'll be happy to forward it to you via email. Because then you're saying there's something before you left that you have committed to give back to that interview, to the panel or to the hiring manager. And that can also go a long way, because there may have been no one else who did that.
Yep. So with that, that kind of ends our session. I'll pass it back to Laura. And, you know, like I said, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. We can continue some dialogue, specific questions, those kind of things offline.
Great. Thank you too, Josh, Marvell. Thank you very much. Bill, did you want to add anything before I go into I've shared the screen, by the way, just showing our sessions going through December. We'll keep you on the distribution for everything. We'll post everything into the Mighty Network, and a recording will be there if you want to re-listen to anything. But I'll let you wrap it up, Bill.
You're muted. Bill, you're muted.
Oh, I think you're still muted, Bill. There you go.
There you go. Okay. I just want to thank Marvell and Josh for a great presentation and thought leadership today. Thanks, Laura, for the amazing things, and Fiona as well, the amazing things you do to get this ready. Thanks to everyone who's a COO in transition or looking for the next role. We're going to fight the good fight and get everybody back to work. So that's our goal. Very simple, very straightforward. I just have one comment about the LinkedIn. If you're not number one with me, you should probably reach out. I have a lot of people in there, and most of them are CEOs. And that's really a function of my original beginning 15 years ago about COOs, that the CEOs have a stake in letting their COOs be a part of the COO forum. So, and I think that if you run into somebody who is a number one with me, that I may or may not know them well, but I certainly drop me an email. I don't take a lot of calls, just so you know. It's just too hectic and structuring and so forth. But I do take some calls, but for the most part, the email will be great, and I can orchestrate and tell you what I know and see if I can help. So that's just the thought. Laura, it's all yours, and thank you.
I don't have anything else. Look forward to next week. We've got a session on December 8th, and we're going to be talking about the Gallup Clifton Strengths. So if you ever took that, dig out your results and have them prepared for next week, and look for an email giving more details on that. And enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck with everything.